тем сторонникам, которые удивлены, я хочу сказать вещь, что удивляться не нужно. Я 4-й год подряд хожу на русский марш.
Им стоит бояться! Им стоит бояться! Да!
Кавказ соси! Кавказ соси!
Москва, не Кавказ! Аллах, пидорас!
Уходите отсюда!
Для русских Москва для москвичей!
Русские вперед! Русские вперед! Русские вперед!
Совершенно нормально и уместно. И ничего опасного в этом мероприятии я не вижу.
Skinheads and masked youths, children and families, members of the Orthodox Church. They believe they're fighting for the rights of Russians, rights that don't include those from other religions or anyone of non-Slavic appearance.
We're tired of these dirty Caucasians.
Chilling symbols are displayed with pride.
In previous years,
Racist slogans were heard among the crowd as some 7,000 radical nationalists joined an annual demonstration known as the Russian March. They're united in anger at corruption, crime, immigration.
Alexei Navaldy! Он сегодня с нами на русском марше!
всем привет с праздником! Слава России! Им стоит бояться! Да! Господь Бог дал великую территорию. Сохранение для вас.
Number one, was he really a hero worth championing? Number two, was he poisoned specifically by the Russian government? Number three, was he wrongfully imprisoned? And number four, was he actually Putin's main opponent? A lot of this comes from Jacques Baude's great book, The Navalny Case, Conspiracy to Serve Foreign Policy. So it's a great book. I'm going to recommend that you read it for yourself. But let's start with the first question. Was he a hero? Even the West knows that he wasn't. Here's a Salon.com article from as far back as 2017 calling him no progressive hero. He was basically, they said, the Russian equivalent of a white nationalist. He hated immigrants. They called him the Russian Trump. They said that liberals, well, if they studied, which they don't, would hate him even more than Steve Bannon. Here are a couple things. They say he's anti-immigrant, especially when it comes from newcomers from Central Asia. They say that Putin, the people who support him, say that Putin is responsible for the destruction of Russia for allowing immigration. He has played a role in skinhead marches. He has the sympathies of other extremists. I love this tweet. It says, always a bummer for Westerners when they first learn about Navalny's anti-immigrant xenophobia and his role in Moscow's skinhead marches. Does the West know this? Do they care? All of this praise, is this the equivalent of hosting a Nazi in Canadian Parliament, I wonder? So you decide. These are, of course, protected beliefs. If you want to be a racist, go ahead. But it's a free country. You're allowed to be. But at least you should know when you're supporting a racist, right? Do you know that if you're supporting Navalny? Okay, question number two. Was he poisoned by the Russian government for being in opposition to Vladimir Putin? Well, the alleged poisoning happened on a flight from Tomsk to Moscow. His entourage said at first that it happened with tea, but the tea was brought to him by his own colleagues. There was another weird story about underwear. When no one could corroborate that, later they said it was from water bottles from the hotel. They said that they actually took these bottles to Germany for analysis, but airport security footage shows that the luggage was checked. There was never any bottles, and the German government never said that they looked through any bottles, so that was weird. And in fact, his own colleagues later retracted the water bottle story. Now, about that poisoning, they claim it was Novichok, which means little one, in Russia. Strangely enough, reports are that Novichok is a combat toxicant that remained at the experimental stage and was never actually adopted by the USSR or Russia. They noted that its high toxicity made it difficult to handle on the battlefield, meaning if they tried to poison people with it, they'd get hurt themselves. So the Soviets abandoned it, and the facilities were then converted to produce chemicals for civilian use in 1987. Okay, but guess who does have Novichok? This is interesting, and guess where it's kept? According to sources, Novichok has been found in several NATO countries, including Germany, the United States, Great Britain, Czechoslovakia, and Sweden, and has been used for the purpose of research and the development of antidotes. As early as 1990s, the United States has filed nearly 140 patents on chemical weapons of this type. And as early as 1998, the American Chemical Weapons Laboratory in Edgewood synthesized Novichok. And according to this former FSB director, a small stockpile of Novichok existed in Ukraine. Huh. Okay, but suppose someone in Russia did get their hands on some Novichok and used it to poison Alexei Navalny. Well, this is known as an organophosphorus toxin, which means it disrupts the functioning of the muscles, and it's irreversible. You seize up, and then you can't reverse that, basically. Doctors, if they suspect that anyone has been poisoned with it, they have to wear full protective gear and masks. Funny, because no one who ever treated Navalny was in that gear. Not on the plane, not in the hospital, not in the ambulance. That's weird, right? Why is that? In fact, when he was later flown to Germany for treatment, we're going to get to why in a second, the German government later said, why did we put our people at risk if he was exposed to Novichok? And they were upset about it. Now, why did he go to Germany? It's weird because if you're going to go to the trouble to poison him, if you're the Russian government, why then do you let him leave for Germany? Why do you poison someone and then let them go? Well, here's why. It's because this NGO group demanded that he be treated in Berlin. They chartered a plane, and the plane took off a day later. Thus, in the late afternoon, at least one German doctor was at his bedside in Russia while arrangements for his transfer were made. On the evening of the 21st, after the personal intervention of Vladimir Putin, the Russian authorities gave their agreement for him to be treated in Germany. Why would Putin do that? Why do you poison someone and then say, okay, we'll break the rules and let him leave to Germany? Why do that? That's weird, right? Especially considering that he was under parole, which forbid him to leave the Russian territory, but Putin allowed it. Okay, now no one on that flight was wearing any protective gear. None, despite any suspicions of Novichok poisoning, which actually the doctors in Russia never suspected. They were just trying to figure out what was wrong with him. It wasn't until he got to Germany that they started to use the language of Novichok poisoning. Now, while he was in Germany, these reports became highly classified. If you look through them, the various reports by the Charité Hospital, which is in Germany, the OPCW by Germany, Sweden, or France, all based on blood samples, which we're going to look at in a second, and none of them confirms the mode of poisoning, nor does it refer to the bottles or the underwear. And this was confirmed later in German parliament. The analysis carried out by all of these Western laboratories remain classified and have not been published or communicated to Russia despite their request. Now, the hospital in Germany did issue a press release saying that the analysis indicated intoxication by a substance, but they didn't say what. Later, a Swedish analysis said this: the presence of XXXX was confirmed in the patient's blood. That's redacted. Well, that's weird. If they want us to think that it's Novichok so much and they know what's there, why redact it from us when you're so busy trying to tell us that he's been poisoned with this? This point about how the Swedish government does the bidding of the US government, their paymasters over Julian Assange, is worth noting as well. Now, later, the medical journal, The Lancet, published this article that did have Navalny's blood work. They concluded as well that it was Novichok, but they also published his blood work, and it showed the following. If you read this over, you can tell that Navalny's blood work had the following: albumin, which suggests a liver problem, high values of this